Welcome to Mystery Cafe, your ultimate stop for gripping detective stories, chilling mysteries, and unforgettable investigations. Here, every video serves a fresh dose of suspense, shocking twists, and cases that challenge your inner detective. From classic whodunits to modern crime stories, we bring the world of mystery straight to your screen, where every clue matters and no secret stays buried for long. Before we start unraveling today's mystery, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Globe showing Europe, Africa. Drop your country, city, or stay in the comments, and let's see how far the Mystery Cafe family reaches. Magnifying glass tilted right.
The Secrets of Willow Creek Inn, Chapter 1. The arrival at Willow Creek Inn. The morning sun glimmered gently across Cabot Cove, painting the harbour water in soft shades of gold as Jessica Fletcher locked her front door, suitcase in hand. Winter had been long and heavy this year, and although she adored her cosy town, Jessica welcomed the idea of a quiet weekend away. She had been invited to give a short keynote at the main writers' retreat, held annually at the historic Willow Creek Inn, an elegant Victorian estate surrounded by woods, brooks, and more legends than most towns had residents. The inn was famous for its charm, and infamous for the peculiar stories whispered about its past. Jessica didn't believe in ghost tales, of course, but she appreciated the drama they added to any old New England house. The drive took a little over an hour. Early autumn leaves swirled in small clusters as Jessica's taxi followed the winding road to the retreat location. As they rounded the final curve, Willow Creek Inn appeared, grand, peaceful, and completely immersed in nature. Tall oaks flanked the entrance, their branches arching forward like a welcoming gate. A quiet creek ran beside the property, sparkling under the morning light. "Quite the place, isn't it?" the driver said, noticing Jessica's expression. "Beautiful," Jessica replied, smiling softly. "It looks like it has a story for every window." "Oh, that it does," he chuckled, before helping her unload the suitcase. Jessica approached the front steps. The inn's wrap-around porch creaked gently underfoot. A soft breeze rustled the wind chimes, producing a low cluster of notes that almost sounded like a warning. Inside, the lobby glowed with warm lighting that reflected off polished floors and antique decor. The reception desk was an old oak counter, and hanging above it was a sepia-toned portrait of the inn's founder, Elias Hardwick, a stern-faced man with piercing eyes. Before Jessica could inspect it further, a cheerful voice called out from behind her. "Mrs. Fletcher!" Jessica turned to see Marlene Scott, the retreat organizer, a lively woman in her late 40s, with bright eyes, curly brown hair, and a clipboard she seemed surgically attached to. "I'm so happy you made it," Marlene said, rushing forward to shake her hand. "Your session is tomorrow morning, but please, relax, enjoy, and let us spoil you." "I appreciate that," Jessica laughed. "The inn already feels wonderfully peaceful." Marlene's smile widened. "It is, mostly. Though the locals love their ghost stories, so don't let them frighten you. Come, I'll show you your room." They walked up the grand staircase past framed photographs of past retreats and old newspaper clippings. Every few steps the floorboards let out a tired creak, as though sighing under years of footsteps. Jessica reached room 207, a charming suite with lace curtains, a floral quilt, and a writing desk overlooking the creek. "It's lovely," Jessica said, placing her bag on the bed. "I'm glad you think so. Lunch will be served shortly in the dining hall. After that, feel free to mingle with the other writers. They're all eager to meet you." After freshening up, Jessica made her way downstairs. The dining hall buzzed with energy. Writers of all ages chatted over bowls of chowder and plates of biscuits. An older gentleman approached Jessica shyly. "Mrs. Fletcher? I'm Henry Lowell, mystery writer. Well, amateur mystery writer." He he corrected himself nervously. "It's truly an honor." Jessica shook his hand warmly. "A pleasure, Henry. Mystery writing is hardly amateur. Every story begins with curiosity." His eyes twinkled. "I hope someday mine might hold a candle to yours." Jessica found herself quickly surrounded by other attendees: Ava Donovan, a suspense novelist with a flair for dramatic scarves; Tom Weaver, a young thriller writer who spoke too quickly for his own good; and Lydia Grant, a local poet with a quiet, haunting voice. The conversations were warm and enthusiastic, but Jessica sensed an undercurrent of tension in the room: fleeting glances, quick whispers, awkward silences that ended abruptly when she approached. Writers often carried secrets in their pockets the way others carried lint, but this felt different. After lunch, Jessica strolled outdoors to explore the grounds. The creek gurgled soothingly as it wound around the property. A stone footbridge arched gracefully over it, connecting the inn to a heavily wooded trail. She stepped onto the bridge, resting her palm on the railing. The wood felt cold, almost damp, despite the sunshine. A voice broke her thoughts. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jessica turned to see a tall, distinguished man in a grey suit, leaning casually against a lamppost. His salt and pepper hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with effortless confidence. "I'm Victor Ames," he said, offering his hand. "Guest speaker, historical fiction." "Jessica Fletcher," she replied. "A pleasure." "Ah, the Queen of Mystery herself. I suspected I'd meet you out here, not at the dessert table. You strike me as someone who prefers quiet to crowds." Jessica chuckled. "You're not wrong. There's something soothing about places with history." Victor's gaze drifted toward the far woods. "And this place has plenty of that. Elias Hardwick built this inn in 1891. Some say he never really left." Jessica raised a brow. "You mean the ghost stories?" "Oh yes," Victor said with a smirk. "Missing guests, notes found in the walls, strange noises from the cellar. Typical town lore, I suppose." "Do you believe any of it?" she asked. "I believe every good story hides a grain of truth." Before Jessica could respond, Marlene rushed toward them from the porch, her face flushed. "Victor, Jessica, I need your help. There's been an incident." Jessica straightened. "What happened?" Marlene swallowed hard. "It's Henry Lowell. He hasn't come back from the woods. We sent a few volunteers to check on him. They found his notebook on the trail, torn. And..." Jessica's heart sank as Marlene continued. "And there's blood on the bridge railing." Jessica's hand instinctively returned to the exact spot she had touched earlier, cold and damp. Victor's expression darkened. "Blood? Are you certain?" Marlene nodded, trembling. "Please, come quickly." Jessica followed her toward the trail entrance. As she approached the bridge again, she saw it clearly now, dark smears along the wood grain, subtle but unmistakable. The breeze stirred the leaves above, carrying with it a chill that prickled across her arms. Henry Lowell was missing, and the peaceful Willow Creek Inn was no longer merely a retreat. It was a crime scene. Chapter 2. The Blood on the Bridge. The forest surrounding Willow Creek Inn seemed to grow darker as Jessica, Marlene, Victor, and 2 volunteers hurried toward the wooden bridge. The cheerful afternoon sun had dimmed behind a bank of clouds, casting long shadows across the path. Jessica could sense the weight of unease settling over the group. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig underfoot felt magnified. When they reached the bridge, Victor knelt near the railing, examining the reddish-brown stain everyone was now painfully aware of. "It hasn't dried completely," he murmured. "This happened recently." Jessica leaned in beside him, careful not to touch the evidence. "And no sign of Henry?" Marlene shook her head anxiously. "None. The volunteers found his notebook a few feet down the trail. torn pages everywhere. Jessica inspected the bridge structure itself. The railing was sturdy, but the edge of the wood near the stain showed splintering, as if someone had gripped it violently. She followed the railing to the far end, where the creek water rushed below. It wasn't a deep drop, but the rocks underneath were sharp and uneven. Could he have slipped? Jessica asked aloud, although the lack of footprints near the edge told a different story. Victor stood, brushing debris from his hands. Henry didn't strike me as the type to wander off too far. Did you speak with him? Jessica asked. Briefly, Victor replied. He told me he came here because he wanted inspiration. Said Willow Creek Inn had a story begging to be uncovered. Victor paused thoughtfully. I think he meant more than ghost tales. Jessica filed the detail away. Let's search the trail. Marlene led the way, though her steps faltered from nerves. Henry was such a kind man. Who had hurt him? That was the question Jessica couldn't ignore. The trail of pages. They found Henry's notebook about 30 yards from the bridge. Pages littered the ground like fallen feathers. Torn edges, scribbles, quickly written notes. Jessica crouched to study them. One page read, E.H. Truth buried in the walls. Another, Voices at night. Someone watching. Follow the creek. Jessica exchanged a look with Victor. E.H. Elias Hardwick, the founder. Most likely, Victor said. But what truth? A volunteer called out from farther down the trail. Over here, more blood. Jessica and the others hurried over. A few drops of blood speckled the leaves, leading deeper into the woods. Marlene wrung her hands. What if he's injured? What if he's out here alone? Jessica touched her arm gently. Let's keep moving, but slowly. We need to preserve the trail. As they walked, Jessica noted something peculiar. The blood traces were sporadic, drops here and there, not a continuous trail. That suggested a minor wound, or a deliberate marking. After 10 minutes, the blood trail abruptly ended beside a fallen log. Victor scanned the area. No footprints, no drag marks. Jessica walked around the log, examining the grass. Someone knew how to hide their tracks. Marlene gasped softly. Jessica, do you think Henry was attacked? Jessica didn't answer immediately. Her gaze traveled from the torn notebook pages to the stopped trail, then to the quiet woods around them. I think something happened here, she said carefully. But whether it was an attack or something else, we don't know yet. Back at the inn, by the time they returned, Willow Creek Inn buzzed with murmurs of panic. Writers clustered in the lobby, whispering theories. Some feared Henry simply wandered off. Others, fueled by local legends, muttered about the Hardwick ghost. Jessica found none of it comforting. Deputy Caleb Foster, a kind-faced man in his late 20s, had arrived to take statements. Caleb was new to the sheriff's office, but eager and meticulous. Mrs. Fletcher, he said, flipping open his notebook, I've heard of your reputation. Anything you noticed out there? Jessica walked him through her observations. Caleb listened with sharp focus. So the blood on the railing wasn't from a fall, he summarized, and the trail suggests someone moved carefully. Yes, Jessica said, Henry may still be alive, but every minute matters. Caleb nodded firmly. We'll organize a full search party immediately. As he left, Lydia Grant, the quiet poet, approached Jessica timidly. Mrs. Fletcher, may I speak with you? Jessica offered a gentle smile. Of course, Lydia. Lydia wrung her hands nervously. Henry wasn't just here to write. He confided in me yesterday evening. He said he found something in this inn. Jessica's eyes sharpened. Something? What kind of something? I don't know, Lydia whispered. But he said it was from the past. Something someone didn't want discovered. Jessica's stomach tightened. Did he mention who? No, Lydia said, but he did mention the founder, Elias Hardwick. Victor, standing nearby, raised a brow. The man in the portrait. So this connects back to him? It would seem so, Jessica murmured. The founder's room. After consulting with Marlene, Jessica gained permission to examine the founder's room, a historical display near the lobby filled with memorabilia from the inn's early days. Old photographs, letters, tools, even pieces of furniture. Jessica's gaze swept the room until it landed on a small, cracked glass case containing an old journal labeled Elias Hardwick, 1891 to 1897. She approached it slowly. The glass was smudged, as if touched recently. Victor joined her. Interesting choice. Jessica leaned closer, noticing a faint scratch near the lock. Has someone tampered with this case? Marlene, who had followed them inside, blinked. I don't think so. Only staff have access. Is it ever opened? Jessica asked. Only during tours, Marlene replied, growing uneasy. Jessica looked at Victor. If Henry was researching Elias Hardwick, this journal would have been the perfect starting point. Victor nodded, provided he could open the case. Jessica crouched to study the bottom edge. A tiny wood splinter lay on the floor, fresh, pale, and out of place among the dark-aged boards. Someone had pried it open. Henry, Jessica murmured, or someone trying to stop him. The portrait. Jessica's gaze drifted upward toward the portrait of Elias Hardwick on the opposite wall. His stern eyes seemed almost alive in the dim light, watching everything. She approached the painting slowly. Victor frowned. What is it? Jessica reached up and touched the frame gently. There, beneath her fingers, was a slight tilt. The painting, she whispered. It's crooked. Victor stepped beside her. It could have shifted over time. Or someone moved it, Jessica corrected softly. She lifted it carefully. Behind the painting was a small recess in the wall. Lydia gasped. Dear heavens! Inside the recess lay a folded piece of old paper. Jessica retrieved it delicately. The paper was yellowed, fragile, and covered in handwritten notes. The ink had faded, but one line remained startlingly clear. The truth is not buried. It watches with every creak of this house. E. Hardwick. Jessica felt a chill run through her. Victor exhaled slowly. He left this behind. No, Jessica said, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Someone hid it. Someone who didn't want the truth found. She carefully refolded the note. If Henry discovered this, she said quietly, then his disappearance wasn't an accident. Jessica looked toward the door leading back to the woods. Someone here at Willow Creek Inn, she whispered, is determined to keep the founder's secret hidden. Chapter 3. The Vanishing of Henry Lowell. Jessica stood in the quiet founder's room, the folded note from behind Elias Hardwick's portrait still warm in her hand. The air felt heavier now, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Victor watched her silently, Marlene pacing nervously near the doorway. It can't be a coincidence, Marlene whispered at last. Henry disappears, and then you find that old note behind a painting. Why would anyone hide something like that? Jessica gently returned the paper to the recess before lowering the portrait. That's what we need to find out. Victor crossed his arms. Well, Hardwick clearly had something to hide. Men with stern portraits always do. Jessica offered a faint smile. Perhaps. But we're not looking for the secrets of 1891. We're looking for who in the present day wants them concealed. Marlene pressed a hand to her forehead. Jessica, do you really think someone here, one of our guests or staff, could have harmed Henry? Jessica didn't answer directly. I think someone is very invested in keeping this inn's past buried. The lobby murmurs grew louder. More guests were gathering, whispering nervously. Lydia stood at the base of the stairs, arms wrapped around herself as if bracing against a cold wind that hadn't yet arrived. Jessica approached her kindly. "Lydia, thank you for speaking up earlier. I know it wasn't easy." Lydia nodded weakly. "Henry trusted me, Mrs. Fletcher. He said the inn felt watched, as if someone was waiting." "Did he say who?" Jessica asked. "No," Lydia whispered, "but he said he saw someone walking the creek trail last night, someone he didn't recognize." Victor arched a brow. "A stranger? All guests were signed in, weren't they?" Marlene stiffened. "Of course. I think." Jessica looked at her. "Marlene, do you keep a register?" "Yes, in the office." Jessica gently placed a hand on her arm. "Let's take a look." The stranger in the register. Marlene unlocked the office, her hands trembling slightly. Jessica took the leather-bound register and flipped through the signatures. Eva Donovan, Tom Weaver, Lydia Grant, Victor Ames, Henry Lowell. All familiar names. Jessica examined the earlier pages. The retreat started yesterday morning. But here, Jessica whispered. A name at the bottom of the list written in hurried script. Daniel Quinn, room 112. Jessica frowned. "I don't recall meeting a Daniel Quinn." Marlene's brows knotted. "Neither do I." Victor leaned over her shoulder. "Room 112, that's in the West Wing. It's practically empty, only 2 rooms booked over there." "Who's in the other room?" Jessica asked. "A travel writer," Marlene replied quickly. "Rebecca Holt." Jessica made a mental note. "Let's see if Mr. Quinn is in his room." As they exited the office, Caleb Foster reappeared from the rear hallway. "Mrs. Fletcher, we're organizing the search team now. Woods, creek area, the ravine." "No sign of Henry yet." Jessica nodded. "Caleb, before you head out, we need to check on a guest. Someone unexpected." He lifted a brow. "Show me." The West Wing. The West Wing was noticeably quieter. The carpet felt thicker, absorbing sound until the hallway felt eerily silent. Jessica knocked gently on room 112. "Mr. Quinn?" she called politely. "Housekeeping." No answer. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Try again." Jessica knocked louder. Still no sound. Victor stepped forward. "Allow me." He knocked with enough force to rattle the doorframe. Nothing. Caleb exchanged a look with Marlene. "You're sure he checked in?" "Positive," she said quickly. "His signature is in the book." Jessica motioned toward the door handle. "Caleb, do you mind?" Caleb tried the handle. Unlocked. The door creaked open slowly. Room 112 was immaculately neat. Too neat. The bed was perfectly made, the desk untouched, the wardrobe empty. Lydia, who had nervously followed behind them, gasped softly. "It looks like no one ever slept here." Jessica's eyes scanned every corner. Her intuition buzzed like a quiet alarm. Caleb exhaled. No luggage, no clothes, no personal items, nothing. Marlene swallowed. But he checked in." Jessica moved toward the desk. A single scratch marked the surface, as if something heavy had rested there briefly. But aside from that, nothing. Victor muttered. Either Daniel Quinn never existed, or he never intended to stay. Jessica ran her fingers along the windowsill. Dust, undisturbed. "He didn't use this room," she murmured. "Not even for a moment." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "Why sign a register, then vanish?" Jessica stepped back into the hallway, thinking. Because he needed access to the inn without suspicion. Signing the register gives him free movement. "And a reason to be near the creek?" Lydia whispered. Jessica nodded. "Exactly." Marlene's voice trembled. "You think, has Daniel Quinn hurt Henry?" Jessica didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. Rebecca Holt. Just as they were about to leave the West Wing, a door opened quietly down the hall. A woman stepped out, tall, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a tidy bun. She wore a neat cream sweater and held a notebook and camera around her neck. "Oh, hello," she said, with a warm smile. "Is everything all right?" Marlene brightened slightly. "Rebecca Holt, good timing." "Travel writer," she said, shaking Jessica's hand. "I'm doing a feature on historical inns." Jessica introduced herself. Rebecca's eyes sparkled. "Jessica Fletcher, I've read your mystery novels. You're practically a legend." Jessica chuckled softly. "Thank you. I only wish I were visiting under a quieter circumstance." Rebecca's smile faded. "Is this about the missing man? I heard people whispering downstairs." Caleb stepped forward. "Miss Holt, did you by any chance see or hear anything unusual last night? Anyone walking the hall?" Rebecca tapped her chin thoughtfully. "Actually, yes." Jessica leaned in. "What did you see?" "I couldn't sleep," Rebecca said. "Jet lag. I got up around midnight and saw a man walking toward the creek path. Tall, dark coat. Moved quickly as if he didn't want to be noticed." Jessica's pulse quickened. "Did you see his face?" "No," Rebecca said, "but he wasn't a guest I recognized." Victor glanced at Jessica. "Daniel Quinn?" "Possibly," Jessica said. Did you say anything to him?" "No, he seemed determined." Caleb exhaled. "All right, we'll put out an alert for Daniel Quinn. Anyone unusual leaves this inn, we stop them." Rebecca tilted her head. Could Henry have simply followed him? Jessica's eyes narrowed. He might have. And he may have discovered something he shouldn't have. Rebecca bit her lip. "Do you think he's still alive?" Jessica looked toward the forest beyond the window. A quiet determination settled in her eyes. "I think Henry Lowell was onto something important, and someone wanted to stop him." The room that didn't exist, as Caleb spoke with Rebecca, Jessica walked back into room 112 one more time. The emptiness bothered her. It wasn't just unused, it was staged. Jessica scanned the room more carefully this time, and something caught her eye. A faint rectangular impression on the carpet near the desk, barely noticeable, as if a small metal box had once sat there. And why remove it? Jessica whispered to herself. Her mind began to assemble the pieces: Henry's notes, the hidden diary, the mysterious stranger, the blood on the railing. Daniel Quinn didn't check in to write. He checked in to take something Henry had found or was about to find. Jessica stepped back into the hallway, her eyes sharp. "Caleb," she called. He turned immediately. "Yes, Mrs. Fletcher?" Jessica's voice was calm but urgent. "We're not dealing with ghost stories. We're dealing with a man with a plan." Victor folded his arms. "What kind of plan?" Jessica looked at them all, her expression tightening. "The kind that involves theft, deception, and possibly murder." Chapter 4. Secrets Beneath the Floorboards. Jessica Fletcher stood alone in the West Wing hallway after Caleb and the others dispersed. The quiet pressed against her ears like cotton, muffling even the distant chatter from the main lobby. Room 112 still stood open, its empty stillness tugging at her curiosity like a loose thread, begging to be pulled. Jessica stepped inside again. The lingering scent of the room, old wood polish, faint dust, told one story. The subtle disturbances told another. Someone had used this space, briefly, secretly, with intention. She crouched near the faint rectangular imprint on the carpet. The shape was roughly the size of a small lockbox, a chest, or a journal case. If Henry found Elias Hardwick's hidden note, Jessica whispered, then what else did he find? And more importantly, What did Daniel Quinn want badly enough to check into this inn under false pretenses? As she rose to her feet, a faint creak came from the hallway. Jessica turned. Eva Donovan, wrapped in one of her signature colourful scarves, leaned against the doorframe. "Mrs. Fletcher," Eva said, her tone breezy, but eyes sharp as a hawk's. "You look like someone who just uncovered a twist." Jessica gave her a measured smile. "Writers are trained observers. I assume you're here for inspiration?" Eva stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Inspiration, yes, but mostly information. People are panicking downstairs." "Understandably," Jessica said. "A guest is missing." Eva folded her arms. "Missing or disappeared?" Jessica looked at her. "Eva, are you implying something more specific?" Eva hesitated, then nodded. "Henry and I spoke last night. He was jittery, kept glancing over his shoulder. He told me he discovered something the inn didn't want him to see." Jessica's mind quickened. "Did he say what it was?" "No, but he said if something happened to him," Eva added dramatically, "to check the floorboards." Jessica blinked. "The floorboards?" Eva nodded firmly. "His exact words. The truth is underfoot, Eva. Underfoot." I thought he was being poetic, but now... She gestured toward room 112. "This room is too clean, too intentional." Jessica's eyes drifted to the far corner. Floorboards uneven, one plank sat higher than the rest by barely a millimeter. Something no casual observer would notice. Jessica moved toward it. Eva's eyes widened. "Are you going to?" Jessica knelt and gently pressed her palm against the raised board. It shifted slightly. She used the tip of her key to pry upward. With a soft pop, the board lifted. Eva let out a gasp. Below the floorboard lay a small metal latch, the top of a compact hiding compartment. Jessica's pulse picked up. "Eva, help me lift it." The compartment door swung open, revealing a dark, hollow space beneath the room. Inside lay a small leather-bound journal, old, cracked, its cover etched with swirling patterns. Beside it rested a narrow metal key, tarnished with age. Jessica carefully removed the journal. Dust clung to it like a second skin. Eva leaned in breathlessly. "Is that Hardwick's journal?" "No," Jessica murmured. "This one is older." She turned it over in her hands. The initials etched into the leather were faint but readable. I.H. Eva frowned. I.H.? But the inn founder was Elias Hardwick. "Yes," Jessica said softly, "but this belongs to someone else." Ava's eyes sparkled with the thrill of mystery. "Who?" Jessica hesitated. The I might stand for Isaac, or Irene, or perhaps... A sharp voice cut through the room. "What are you two doing in here?" Jessica and Eva looked up. Rebecca Holt stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression strained. Jessica rose calmly. "We're investigating. This room may be connected to Henry's disappearance." Rebecca stepped closer, her gaze flicking to the floorboard compartment. "And you think Henry hid something there?" Eva answered, before Jessica could. "We think Henry found something someone else wanted." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "Caleb needs this evidence. He should be the one collecting it." Jessica nodded. "He will, but every minute matters. If Henry is injured..." Rebecca held up a hand. "I understand, Jessica. I just don't want you getting hurt." Jessica studied her carefully. There was genuine concern in Rebecca's voice, but also something else. Anxiety, maybe fear. "Rebecca," Jessica said gently, "you told us earlier you saw a man walking toward the creek last night. A man you didn't recognize. Could you describe him again?" Rebecca hesitated. "Tall, dark coat, quick stride." "Anything else? Build? Hair color?" "I didn't see his face," she snapped suddenly. "I told you that." Ava stepped back slightly at Rebecca's tone. Jessica remained calm. "Of course, I didn't mean to pressure you." Rebecca rubbed her forehead. "Sorry, I'm just exhausted and scared. This place, it's not what I expected." "None of us expected this," Ava murmured. Rebecca glanced at the journal in Jessica's hand. "Be careful with that. Whatever Henry found, it scared him." Then she turned and walked quickly back down the hall, leaving Jessica and Ava alone again. The journal. They moved to the sitting area in the West Wing, where Jessica carefully opened the leather journal. The pages were delicate, stained with age and moisture. Ava leaned over the table. "What does it say?" Jessica read slowly. "November 3rd, 1889. The inn is nearly finished, but I sense unrest. Elias pushes the men too hard. The accidents are not accidents. Something foul lurks behind his ambition." Ava's mouth fell open. "This writer, whoever I.H. is, knew Elias, worked with him." Jessica nodded. "And suspected wrongdoing." She turned the page. "December 14th, 1889. Elias claims the disappearances are superstitions, but I know better. The creek carries secrets, and the walls whisper at night." Ava shivered. "That sounds ominous." Jessica continued reading. "January 6th, 1890. I cannot stay silent. If anyone finds this journal, know that what Elias hides will poison this place forever." Ava swallowed hard. "Jessica, this isn't a ghost story. This is a confession." "Yes," Jessica said quietly. "And someone knew about it, or feared Henry had found it." Ava's eyes widened. "So Daniel Quinn came here to steal the journal?" Jessica nodded. "It appears so. He must have learned about its existence and followed Henry." Ava looked troubled. "But why take Henry? Why hurt him?" Jessica's expression darkened. "Because Henry wasn't the only one looking for the truth." "What do you mean?" Jessica looked toward the window, overlooking the woods. "Someone else here knew about this journal long before Henry came," she said slowly. "Someone desperate to keep the inn's past hidden." She closed the journal gently. "And they're willing to do anything to protect that secret." A scream on the stairs. Just as Jessica and Ava prepared to take the journal to Caleb, a piercing scream echoed from the main staircase. Jessica bolted to the hallway, Ava close behind. Guests were rushing toward the stairs, panic rising like wildfire. At the base of the staircase stood Tom Weaver, pale, shaking. On the steps beside him lay a torn piece of Henry Lowell's jacket. Fresh blood smeared across the railing. Ava gasped. "Oh no!" Jessica's breath tightened. This wasn't a disappearance, it was a message. Henry was alive, and the one who took him wanted everyone to know that this was far from over. Chapter 5. The Man in the Shadowed Woods. Tom Weaver stood frozen at the base of the staircase, his trembling hand hovering above the torn scrap of Henry's jacket. The blood on the fabric was fresh, still damp, still dark, still frighteningly real. Guests crowded behind Jessica, whispering, gasping, speculating, but Jessica's instincts honed in on a single detail. Henry's jacket fragment wasn't dropped. It was placed, deliberately, like a breadcrumb, a warning, a taunt. Jessica knelt beside the fragment. The smear of blood trailed faintly up the banister, 3 inches, maybe 4, before it vanished abruptly as if wiped clean. She stood, slowly. "Tom, who found this?" Tom swallowed hard, pointing at himself with a trembling finger. I did. I was coming down to get coffee, and I saw something dark on the stairs. I thought it was lint, but then I picked it up and—" His voice cracked. "Oh God, Jessica. Is Henry dead?" Jessica shook her head firmly. "We don't know that, but whoever left this wanted to scare us." Victor Ames arrived at Jessica's side, his expression stern. Jessica, this is escalating. Whoever's responsible isn't just hiding, they're flaunting it. Ava Donovan hovered behind them, clutching her scarf. Do you think Henry's still alive? Yes, Jessica said, confidently. This message is too theatrical for someone who's already killed. They're keeping him alive for a reason. Caleb Foster hurried up the stairs, breathless. I heard the scream. What happened? Jessica handed him the jacket scrap. Caleb's face paled. Okay, he said, regaining his composure. We increase the search. Woods, creek, ravine, every inch of this property gets checked. Victor pointed toward the lobby. What about Daniel Quinn? Has he resurfaced? Caleb shook his head. Not yet. My deputies are checking the surrounding roads. Jessica crossed her arms. Quinn may not have left the grounds. He could still be hiding. Caleb's jaw tightened. Or he had help. Jessica nodded subtly. Exactly. The plan. Within minutes, Caleb organized volunteers, including a few brave writers eager to help. Jessica insisted on joining the search party, despite Marlene's objections. Jessica, Marlene pleaded, this is dangerous. What if the person who hurt Henry is still out there? Jessica's voice was steady. If he is, then the faster we find him, the safer the others will be. Victor stepped forward. I'm going with you. Eva raised her hand. Count me in too. Henry was my friend. Caleb hesitated. All right, but stay close, and no one wanders off alone. Jessica nodded. Agreed. They regrouped outside near the creek trail. The atmosphere had changed. The crisp, refreshing woods now felt oppressive, thick, watchful. Mist drifted between the trees as if the forest were hiding its own secrets. Jessica paused at the bridge. Caleb, give me a moment. He signaled for the others to hold back. Jessica stepped onto the bridge, crouching again near the stain where the blood had first been found. She ran her fingers lightly above the surface, not touching, but observing. The smear was low, horizontal. Someone fell against this railing, she murmured, but they didn't fall off the bridge. They were steadied, maybe even dragged. Victor watched her thoughtfully. Dragged where? Jessica straightened, scanning the surroundings. Not forward, not toward the inn, and not left. The ground is too uneven. She pointed toward a narrow trail on the right, barely visible through the ferns. There. Ava squinted. I thought that was just a deer path. Jessica shook her head. No, look at the broken branches. Someone forced their way through recently. Caleb stepped beside her. Everyone, this way. They followed the narrow path. It dipped slightly, curving behind a cluster of birch trees. The air grew cooler. A faint sound of water dripping echoed in the distance. Ava shivered. I don't like this. Jessica remained alert, scanning for any trace, footprints, debris, signs of movement. Then she spotted something, a shoe print, large, deep, pressed into the soft earth. Caleb, she called. He knelt beside her. Definitely a man's boot. Victor studied the ground. Daniel Quinn? Jessica nodded. Likely. But then she noticed something else. Next to the large print, a smaller one, lighter. Henry's. Eva gasped. That means Henry walked here, alive. Jessica nodded, or was forced to walk. They continued along the hidden path until it widened unexpectedly. And there, half hidden beneath a fallen branch, Jessica spotted Henry's pen. She picked it up slowly. He was here recently. Ava's voice quivered. But where is he now? Jessica scanned the clearing, and then she saw it, a piece of rope tied around a tree trunk, recently cut. Caleb clenched his jaw. They restrained him. Jessica felt a chill move through her. Yes, and then they moved him again. Victor studied the direction the rope pointed. If Henry was tied here, then taken, the next path would be... There, Jessica said, pointing. A steep incline led deeper into darker woods, toward an area local maps labelled Raven's Hollow, a place known for marshy soil, fog, and notoriously unstable ground. Many hikers avoided it entirely. Eva's face drained of colour. "Someone took Henry into there," Jessica nodded. "Whoever we're dealing with knows this forest well." Caleb blew out a breath. "All right, we push forward, but carefully." The cabin. As they descended toward Raven's Hollow, the trees grew twisted, their branches curling like bony fingers. Mist clung to the ground. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and something sharp, almost metallic. "Jessica," Victor whispered. "Do you smell that?" Jessica nodded. "Blood." Eva covered her nose. Caleb raised a hand. "Stop!" Ahead, through the fog, the silhouette of a small cabin appeared. Old, sagging, unlit. Jessica's heartbeat picked up. "I had no idea there was a cabin here." Caleb gripped his flashlight tightly. "This wasn't on the property map," Jessica whispered. "Which means someone didn't want it found." They approached cautiously. The door stood slightly ajar. A faint sound drifted from inside. A groan. Ava grabbed Jessica's arm. "That sounds like—" Jessica didn't wait. She pushed the door fully open. Inside, dust floated like tiny ghosts in the beam of Caleb's flashlight. The cabin was sparsely furnished, a table, a chair, a rotting stove, but in the far corner, Henry Lowell lay on the floor. Pale, weak, alive, but barely. Ava dropped to her knees. "Henry! Oh, thank God!" Henry's eyelids fluttered open. "Eva! Mrs. Fletcher!" Jessica knelt beside him. "Henry, you're safe! We found you!" Henry swallowed painfully. No, you don't understand. He's coming back." Jessica leaned closer. "Who, Henry? Who did this?" Henry's lips trembled. "Not Daniel Quinn?" he whispered. "It wasn't Quinn." Jessica froze. Caleb's eyes widened. "Then who?" Henry looked at Jessica with terror. "He's from here, Willow Creek. Someone who knows the inn's secrets." Jessica's heart pounded. "Who, Henry?" Henry coughed out the name. A name that made Eva gasp. A name that made Caleb step back. A name that made Victor's face turn ashen. And a name Jessica had quietly suspected. Elias Hardwick's grandson. Chapter 6. The Heir of Hardwick. Henry's whisper echoed in the silent, decaying cabin. "Elias Hardwick's grandson." Jessica's breath hitched. The room seemed to shrink, as though the very walls leaned in to hear what Henry would say next. Eva clutched Henry's hand, eyes wide with dread. Caleb straightened sharply, scanning the cabin as if the suspect might burst through the walls at any moment. "Henry," Jessica said gently. "Elias Hardwick never had children. The town records—" Henry shook his head weakly. "Public records? Yes. But he had a son, a hidden one, born out of wedlock, kept secret to protect the family name." Jessica froze. "Are you certain?" Henry nodded. "I found references in Elias's letters, and the journal you discovered. Elias feared scandal. He sent the boy away, but the family bloodline survived, and that descendant lives here, at the inn." Eva's voice trembled. "But that could be anyone." "No," Henry whispered. "He knew about the journal. He confronted me." Jessica leaned closer. "Henry, who is he?" Henry's breath shuddered. "His name is—" A loud crack split the air. Jessica jerked her head around, Caleb drawing his pistol instantly. Something, or someone, had stepped on a branch outside the cabin. Victor whispered, "We're not alone." Jessica pressed a finger to her lips. The wind outside howled, pushing the warped cabin door inward by an inch. A shadow moved past the window. A silhouette tall enough to scrape the top of the frame. Caleb mouthed silently, "Go!" Jessica nodded and signaled Ava to stay with Henry. Then she, Caleb and Victor slipped out the side of the cabin, circling around to catch whoever was lurking. The forest beyond was suffocatingly quiet. No birds, no insects, just the oppressive weight of fog and the pounding of boots against damp earth. Caleb motioned left. Jessica followed. Branches cracked again, closer this time. Victor whispered, "There!" A tall figure darted between the trees. Caleb lunged. "Stop! Sheriff's Department!" The figure sprinted deeper into the woods, cloak brushing against branches, boots slamming against wet soil. Jessica's heart pounded. Whoever this man was, he had strength, speed, and confidence navigating the forest. "Jessica!" Caleb called. "This way!" She followed him up a steep bank, grabbing roots for balance. Victor scrambled behind them, breathing heavily. The shadowed figure slipped behind a cluster of pine trees and vanished. Caleb skidded to a halt. "Where'd he go?" Jessica scanned the area, nothing but fog and the distant sound of the creek. Victor groaned. "You're telling me we just lost a full-grown man in an empty forest?" Jessica ran her fingers over the bark of a pine tree. Something warm and wet coated her fingertips. Blood. Fresh. "He's injured," she said. "Henry must have fought back." Caleb holstered his gun angrily. "All right, we regroup. We escort Henry out of here safely and comb this forest with every deputy we have." Jessica nodded. "He's watching us, Caleb. He knows these woods better than we do." Caleb's eyes darkened. "We'll find him." Back at the inn, they carried Henry back to Willow Creek Inn, Eva offering frantic encouragement while Caleb radioed for medical support. The inn's atmosphere, already tense, now throbbed with genuine fear. Lydia rushed toward them. "Oh my goodness, Henry, you found him!" Ava nodded tearfully. "Yes, but he's hurt." They carried Henry to a quiet room near the lobby. Rebecca Holt appeared immediately, worry etched across her face. "What happened?" she asked. Jessica moved her aside gently. "Henry needs rest. He'll explain when he can." Caleb closed the door behind the medic, then faced Jessica. "All right," he said. "Let's figure out who this mystery grandson could be." Victor folded his arms. "If Elias Hardwick fathered a child secretly, that child's line might have returned here for, what? Revenge? Possession? To reclaim the inn?" Jessica turned to Marlene, who stood trembling near the desk. "Marlene, please bring the employee roster and the volunteer list." Marlene hurried to the office. Rebecca frowned. "Why employees?" Jessica answered, "Because a descendant of Elias would have grown up with inherited myths and whispered stories. Someone with a connection to the inn. A reason to be here." Ava hesitated. "You think he works here?" Jessica didn't answer. Marlene returned with a binder. Jessica flipped through it quickly. Housekeepers, groundskeepers, maintenance workers, event staff. Then her finger paused. A name, a man in his early 30s, quiet, polite, easily overlooked, worked part-time at the inn. Oliver Hartwell. Jessica felt a chill. "Hartwell," she whispered. "A variation of Hardwick, a name easily altered." Victor leaned over her shoulder. "You think Oliver is the grandson?" Jessica opened another file. A photograph of Oliver stared back at her. Somber eyes, sharp cheekbones, expression unreadable. Caleb scanned the page. "He's been with the inn for 2 years, keeps to himself, does maintenance work." Jessica tapped the page. "And he knows the inn structure better than anyone." Ava gasped. "Do you think he's the one who dragged Henry?" Jessica nodded slowly. "It fits." Rebecca stepped forward abruptly. "But Oliver, he's so quiet, so harmless looking." Jessica gave her a pointed look. "Appearances deceive, especially with someone raised under a legacy of secrets." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Where is he now?" Marlene swallowed. He was supposed to be fixing a loose railing on the third floor. Jessica stiffened. The third floor has access to the attic walkway. Victor's eyes widened. A perfect vantage point. To watch everything. Caleb snapped the binder closed. Let's move. The attic walkway. They raced up the staircase, the old wood groaning under their feet. The hallway on the third floor was dimmer, quieter, as though the shadows themselves watched their approach. Caleb reached the maintenance door and shoved it open. "Oliver," he shouted, "this is the sheriff's department. Show yourself." No response. Jessica stepped inside. The attic walkway was long, narrow, and lined with exposed beams. Dust coated everything. The air was cold, too cold. Jessica spotted something ahead, a shape hunched in the corner. "Oliver?" she called calmly. Caleb drew his gun. "Stay behind me." They approached cautiously. A figure rose slowly from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, eyes dark and hollow. Oliver Hartwell. He stepped forward, hands spread, palms open. "It's not what you think," he said softly. Caleb snapped, "Don't move!" Oliver's face was unreadable. "I didn't hurt Henry." Jessica studied him carefully. "Henry said the man knew the inn, knew the secrets, knew the forest." Oliver nodded. "And I do," he said quietly, "because I've spent my whole life protecting them." Victor scoffed. "Protecting? You stalked Henry." Oliver shook his head. "I followed him to keep him alive." Jessica narrowed her eyes. "Then who dragged him into the woods?" Oliver's expression changed, fear flickering behind his eyes. "The true heir," he whispered. "The real grandson." Jessica's heart stopped. "Then who are you?" she asked. Oliver bowed his head. "A decoy," he said softly. "Someone he planted here to watch." Caleb cursed. "Who planted you?" Oliver's voice trembled. "The heir's name is—" But before he could reveal it, a deafening crash echoed behind them. The attic walkway shook violently. Jessica turned in horror. Someone had collapsed the staircase, trapping them inside, and from the shadows, footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, threatening. The real heir had arrived.
Chapter 7. The real heir reveals himself. Dust rained from the rafters as the attic walkway shuddered. Jessica shielded her eyes while Caleb braced himself against a beam. Oliver stumbled back, terror flashing across his face. The staircase behind them had collapsed completely. Splintered wood and shattered nails scattered like broken bones across the floor. Whoever had done this didn't want them leaving. Caleb steadied his gun. "Stay alert, he's here." Victor, breathless, whispered, "Jessica, this isn't just a cover-up. It feels like a hunt." Jessica didn't respond. Her focus honed in on the sound approaching from the far end of the attic walkway. Slow, heavy steps, each one measured, powerful. A silhouette emerged in the dim light, first a shadow, then the faint outline of a tall man. He paused outside the spill of sunlight that leaked through the dusty window. Oliver's voice trembled. "Don't. Please don't." Jessica stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you?" The man exhaled, amused. "Mrs. Fletcher, I've read your books. You solve puzzles with elegance. Unfortunately for you, this one was never meant to be solved." He stepped into the light. Jessica's breath stilled. It was Daniel Quinn, except not the timid signature in the register, not the faceless stranger Rebecca described. No, the man before them stood with unnerving confidence. Caleb narrowed his eyes. "You're under arrest. Hands where I can see them." Daniel smiled slowly. "You think this is about arresting me, Sheriff Foster? You're a good man, but far out of your depth." Oliver looked broken. "You said you'd protect the inn. You lied." Daniel turned to him. I protected you for as long as I needed to. Jessica studied him. You're Elias Hardwick's true descendant. Daniel inclined his head slightly. A legacy born from secrets built on fear and maintained with precision. Victor clenched his fists. Why target Henry? Why hurt him? Daniel's expression darkened. Because he found the journal, a journal meant only for the Hardwick bloodline. Oliver stepped between Jessica and Daniel. You used me, told me my family owed yours. You said Elias was my ancestor too. Daniel snorted. I needed a loyal pair of eyes inside the inn, someone invisible, someone obedient. Caleb moved slowly to flank Daniel. Why expose yourself now? Daniel's smile vanished. Because Jessica Fletcher is here, and that means the endgame must accelerate. Jessica noticed something. His left sleeve was slightly torn, faint bloodstains soaked into the cuff. You were injured, she said calmly. Henry fought back. Daniel's eyes flickered. He was more persistent than expected. Oliver lunged forward suddenly. You monster! Daniel moved with terrifying speed, striking Oliver in the ribs and sending him crashing against a beam. Stay down! Daniel growled. Jessica stepped forward. Where is Henry now? Daniel's eyes sharpened. Safe. For now, I need him alive. He knew too much. But he also didn't understand what he found. Caleb kept his gun aimed. And what was that? Daniel looked at the cracked window overlooking the creek. Proof of Elias Hardwick's true legacy. A secret fortune hidden beneath this inn. Jessica's stomach tightened. A treasure? Daniel's voice lowered to a whisper. A vast sum embezzled from Hardwick's business partners, enough to buy silence for decades, and now it's mine. Victor exhaled shakily. You kidnapped Henry over money? Not money, Daniel corrected. Legacy. I was born into a story that was stolen from me. Now I'm taking it back. Jessica spoke carefully. You think reclaiming stolen funds makes you the rightful heir? That is not legacy, it's greed. Daniel's jaw flexed. Legacy isn't given, it's taken. He stepped back toward the far end of the attic. Caleb barked. Stop! Daniel raised a small metal device in his hand. A trigger. Jessica's heart dropped. Caleb, no sudden moves. He rigged something. Daniel's grin returned. Mrs. Fletcher understands. I admire that. He pressed the trigger. A deep, rumbling noise came from below the floorboards. Victor shouted, What did you do? Daniel shrugged. A small distraction, just enough to keep you occupied. Jessica grabbed a beam as the floor trembled again, dust spilling from above. Daniel moved toward a hidden door Jessica hadn't noticed before, tucked behind a slanted support beam, a maintenance crawl space. Oliver shouted, That leads to the old plumbing tunnels. He's going to escape. Daniel smirked. Escape? No, I'm going to retrieve what rightfully belongs to my family. Jessica stepped forward. Daniel, this ends now. You can still walk away. Daniel paused, considering her. For a moment, Jessica thought she saw something human in his eyes. Then it vanished. You're brilliant, Mrs. Fletcher, he said softly. But brilliance doesn't beat blood. He slipped through the hidden door and pulled it shut with a harsh clang. Caleb rushed to follow, but the walkway shook violently again, wood snapping under the strain. Jessica grabbed his arm. Caleb, stop! The beams won't hold! Victor backed away, coughing on the rising dust. He's collapsing the structure around us. Jessica steadied herself. He wants us trapped here while he retrieves the treasure. Caleb loaded another round into his weapon. Then we find another way out. There has to be one. Oliver, clutching his ribs, pointed weakly toward the beams. There's an alternate stairwell in the far corner, hidden behind insulation. Jessica nodded. If we can reach it. Eva's voice echoed from below. Jessica! Caleb! Are you up there? Jessica shouted back, "Stay clear of the staircase, it's unstable." Caleb kicked aside debris. "We move fast. Daniel has minutes before he disappears underground." Jessica steadied her nerves. This wasn't just about stopping a criminal. This was about saving Henry, exposing the truth, and preventing a legacy of violence from being reborn. She looked at Caleb and Victor. "Let's go." They pushed forward into the trembling attic. Daniel Quinn was on the move, and Jessica Fletcher was right behind him.
Chapter 8. The Treasure Beneath the Creek. The attic groaned under its own weight as Jessica, Caleb, Victor and Oliver forced their way toward the far corner. Every step made the floor tremble, dust drifting like shaken snow. Somewhere deep below the inn, Daniel Quinn was moving swiftly through the old service tunnels, heading straight toward whatever treasure Elias Hardwick had hidden more than a century ago. Jessica pressed a hand to the wooden wall for balance. "Caleb, we need to reach that alternate stairwell now." Oliver, limping heavily, pointed toward an insulation panel bulging slightly from the wall. "There, the hinge is behind it." Caleb ripped back the insulation, revealing a narrow, steel-frame stairwell meant for staff. Jessica ushered Victor and Oliver through first. As she descended, she felt the attic finally give in, beams cracking behind them in a thunderous clatter. They reached the hallway just as a section of the attic floor gave way, sending a plume of debris into the corridor. Ava Donovan and Lydia Grant rushed forward. "Jessica!" Ava cried. "Are you all right?" "We're fine," Jessica assured her, coughing lightly. "But the building isn't." Caleb turned to his deputies. "Secure the third floor. No one goes up." Ava asked breathlessly, "Where is Daniel Quinn?" Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Heading to the creek." Victor frowned. "Why the creek?" Jessica opened the old Hardwick journal, because Elias Hardwick feared exposure. If he hid money or records of wrongdoing, it would be somewhere close, somewhere accessible to him alone. She turned to a specific line. "The truth rests where the water whispers beneath." Lydia gasped. "The underground creek tunnel." Victor snapped his fingers. "That old drainage passage, the one the inn sealed decades ago." Jessica nodded. "Daniel plans to retrieve the treasure before anyone knows it exists." Caleb grabbed his flashlight. "Then let's end this." The dash to the creek. They hurried down the back staircase, out through the side doors and into the woods. The creek roared louder now, rainfall from earlier in the week, turning the once gentle stream into a forceful surge. Oliver stopped suddenly. "There! The entrance!" A moss-covered stone arch protruded from the embankment. Rusted metal bars meant to block the old drainage tunnel had been bent outward recently. Jessica's pulse quickened. "He's already inside?" Caleb climbed down the bank, splashing through the edge of the creek. Jessica followed carefully, boots slipping slightly. Victor and Eva stayed close behind. The tunnel's mouth yawned like a dark throat. Caleb raised his flashlight. "Daniel, come out with your hands where I can see them." A faint metallic clink echoed in response. Then, silence. Jessica motioned forward. "Be cautious. Daniel is desperate now." They entered the tunnel one by one. Cold air swept through, carrying the scent of whetstone and rust. Their boots splashed through shallow water as they moved deeper. Jessica studied the walls. These stones, they're original. Hardwick supervised this construction himself. Victor grunted. "Meaning the treasure is close?" Jessica didn't answer, but her instincts said yes. The underground chamber. After several minutes, the tunnel widened into a cavernous room supported by thick wooden beams. Water trickled down the stone walls, and there, in the center of the room, illuminated by Daniel's lantern, stood a large iron chest. Daniel Quinn knelt beside it, prying at the lock with a crowbar. His coat hung torn at the sleeve, streaked with dried blood. "You're too late," he said without turning. The Hardwick fortune is mine. Caleb stepped forward, gun raised. Move away from the chest. Daniel ignored him. Jessica stepped forward. Daniel, whatever is in that chest won't fix your past. You're letting a dead man's sins decide your fate. Daniel turned then, eyes wild, desperate, tortured. You don't understand, he hissed. Elias Hardwick built everything on lies. My family was forced to live in the shadows. Now this treasure, this legacy belongs to me. It never belonged to anyone, Jessica said gently. It was stolen, and you can't reclaim your identity with stolen things. Daniel hesitated. A crack appeared in his expression, doubt, pain, longing. Then he tightened his jaw defiantly. No, I've come too far. He drove the crowbar down hard. The ancient lock snapped. The chest creaked open. Victor gasped. Jessica. Jessica stepped forward, shining her flashlight inside. Inside the chest was not money, not jewels, not gold, but letters, boxes of them, records, confessions, names of victims, evidence of Elias Hardwick's crimes. Daniel stared in disbelief. No, this can't be it. Jessica touched one letter gently. This was never a treasure of wealth. It was a treasure of truth. Caleb approached slowly. These documents, they'll bury the Hardwick name. Jessica looked at Daniel. Elias hid these to protect himself, not to protect you. Daniel's face crumpled. So all this time, all my planning... Jessica nodded softly. Chase in lies you never owned. Daniel collapsed to his knees, defeated. The crowbar clattered to the floor. Ava whispered, Is it over? Jessica looked around the chamber, at Daniel, at the letters, at the tunnel. Yes, she said quietly. This part is. Caleb cuffed Daniel without resistance. Daniel Quinn, you're under arrest. Daniel didn't fight. He didn't speak. He simply stared at the chest, shoulders sagging. Jessica felt a pang of unexpected sympathy. A man born into a legacy of secrets, consumed by it, destroyed by it, the aftermath at the inn. The next morning, Willow Creek Inn buzzed with officers cataloguing evidence. Henry Lowell, bandaged but awake, sat comfortably in the lounge, surrounded by relieved guests. Eva hugged him tightly. Don't ever do that again. Henry laughed weakly. I didn't plan on it. Oliver Hartwell sat nearby, head bowed. Jessica approached him. You were manipulated, but you have a chance now to define your own life. Oliver nodded gratefully. Thank you. For seeing I was more than a pawn. Jessica smiled warmly. We all are. Caleb approached next, tipping his hat. Mrs. Fletcher, I can't thank you enough. Without you, we'd still be chasing shadows. Jessica chuckled. Shadows often tell stories if you listen to them. Victor stepped in, raising a cup of coffee. To Jessica Fletcher, the only person who can turn a writer's retreat into an actual mystery. Laughter rippled through the room. Marlene dabbed her eyes. I don't know how to thank you, Jessica. This inn, this retreat, it's been saved. Jessica smiled kindly. Just promise next year's retreat involves less crime. Everyone laughed again. Outside, the creek flowed calmly, no more secrets whispering beneath. Jessica gazed out the window. In every mystery, truth has a way of surfacing. Just like water, just like justice. And at Willow Creek Inn, both had finally found their way home.